The drama surrounding this fight didn't begin with the opening bell, and it certainly didn't end when Anthony Joshua's right hand shattered Jake Paul's jaw. It lingered in the weeks before, in the uneasy laughter of promoters, in the side-eye glances of boxing purists, and in the blunt warnings from figures who have spent their lives around real violence. Long before Jake Paul found himself lying in a hospital bed, wired shut, staring at a future of liquid meals and titanium plates, there were people saying this was inevitable, and perhaps no one embodied that cold sense of inevitability more than Dana White. White never pretended this was some romantic clash of generations or a bold experiment pushing combat sports forward. To him, it was simple. There are levels to fighting, and marketing can't erase physics. You can dress it up, stream it on Netflix, sell it as a global spectacle. But when a novice steps in with a fully grown, world-class heavyweight, the outcome is not mystery or drama. It's damage. So when news broke that Jake Paul was heading into surgery after being knocked out cold by Anthony Joshua, White didn't sound shocked or saddened. He sounded vindicated. He'd joked before that people were only tuning in to see Jake finally get offed in the ring. And as brutal as that sounded, the fight itself only reinforced his point. This wasn't a tragedy in White's eyes. It was the predictable result of someone playing a game they hadn't earned the right to play. Boxing, at its highest level, is not cosplay. It's not a content experiment. It's a profession built on years of attrition, on broken noses and empty gyms, on climbing rankings no algorithm can shortcut. Watching Jake Paul being wheeled into surgery didn't feel like a shocking twist. It felt like the end of a sentence everyone else had already read. And yet, even White's criticism wasn't without nuance. He admitted Jake Paul had done a fantastic job in one very specific sense. He drew money. He sold the fight. He made Netflix care. In the cold math of combat sports promotion, that still counts for something. As long as you draw, you get chances. You get second chances, third chances, even fourth chances. And Jake Paul, for all the ridicule, still draws. He drew with Tyson. He drew here. That's why White believes Netflix will probably go to bat for him at least one more time. Because the axiom remains undefeated. If you make money, the machine keeps feeding you. But White was clear about one thing. This particular fight was bad. Not just bad for Jake Paul, but bad for boxing. It turned the sport into a circus. It exposed officiating issues. It blurred the line between professional competition and spectacle to the point where even seasoned fans felt embarrassed watching it unfold. Seeing a fighter repeatedly dive for legs, initiate clinches, and essentially wrestle his way through rounds while the referee hesitated only made things worse. This wasn't clever survival. It was chaos masquerading as strategy. Anthony Joshua, on the other hand, looked like a man who didn't quite know what to do with the situation at first. At 243 pounds of lean muscle, he stepped into the ring looking every inch the two-time unified heavyweight champion. Jake Paul, weighing in at 216, looked smaller in a way that went beyond numbers. The physical disparity was uncomfortable. The kind that makes you wonder how any commission signed off on this in the first place. Analysts would later describe the bout as a Tom and Jerry cartoon, with Jake darting, ducking, and grabbing simply to avoid being flattened. The Florida State Athletic Commission took heat almost immediately. Critics called the sanctioning irresponsible. When you allow a novice to share the ring with one of the most dangerous finishers in the world, you're not setting up a fair contest. You're creating liability. And as the rounds ticked by, that liability became harder and harder to ignore. Joshua appeared to carry Jake for stretches, not out of mercy, but out of calculation. Those close to him said he could feel Jake being invasive, constantly clinching, constantly collapsing to the canvas, trying to turn the fight into something it wasn't. So Joshua slowed things down. He marinated him. He followed him, touched him, waited, and midway through the sixth round, he finally let his right hand go. One clean shot was all it took. The punch didn't just end the fight. It broke Jake Paul's jaw, rearranged his teeth, and sent him straight to the hospital. X-rays circulated online almost immediately. Stark images of bone and metal that stripped away any remaining illusion of this being just another influencer boxing night. And yet, in the aftermath, Joshua was gracious. He praised Jake's bravery. He acknowledged his courage. That praise, however, only highlighted the uncomfortable truth. Courage alone doesn't make you belong in that ring. Within the Paul family, the tone shifted almost instantly. Gone was the pre-fight bravado, replaced by damage control and Logan Paul emerged as his brother's loudest defender, insisting Jake had won 4 rounds before the knockout, praising his toughness for fighting with a snapped jaw. He talked about heart, about guts, about surviving. But the wider combat sports community wasn't buying it. Daniel Cormier, Carl Froch, and others were ruthless in their assessments. They suggested Joshua deliberately extended the fight to give the Netflix audience their money's worth before finishing it. Froch called the event unedifying, arguing it damaged boxing's integrity far more than it built Jake Paul's legacy. From his perspective, this wasn't a heroic stand. It was a mismatch that never should have happened. Round by round, the story remained the same. Jake Paul wasn't trying to win a boxing match. He was trying to survive. He ran, he clinched, he ducked low, sometimes falling to the floor, throwing wild swings out of desperation. One overhand right did sneak through early, catching Joshua and briefly sparking conversation online, but it bounced off his chin like water off a duck's back. There was no real effect, no momentum shift. Just a reminder that heavyweight champions absorb shots differently. Joshua, by contrast, looked undermotivated at times, almost confused by the task in front of him. He followed Jake around, occasionally taking his eye off the ball, perhaps thinking, what is this guy even doing in here with me? But boxing has a way of punishing even momentary lapses, and Joshua eventually refocused. The only reason the fight ended when it did was because Jake simply didn't have the engine to keep running. And that's where the distinction between training like a professional and being one becomes unavoidable. Jake Paul trains hard. No one disputes that. He's in the gym daily. He's fit. But that doesn't make you a professional fighter. What makes you a professional is earning your place through the rankings, fighting peers, building experience against people who are trying just as hard to hurt you. You don't skip that process without consequences. The warnings had been there. Conor McGregor tweeted before the opening bell that the fight was a layup for Joshua. He later hinted that Jake would be permanently altered by the encounter. At the time, it sounded like typical McGregor bravado. Afterward, it felt prophetic. Taking a clean shot from a heavyweight champion doesn't just hurt, it changes you. It alters the way your brain and body respond to trauma. As Jake Paul sat in a hospital room, unable to eat solid food, staring down months of rehabilitation, the conversation shifted from memes to something quieter and more serious. Was the payday worth it? Was the gate, reportedly in the hundreds of millions, worth the permanent hardware now holding his face together? Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't make a liquid diet feel like victory. Not everyone was eager to pile on. Some voices emerged urging respect. They called Jake Paul a maniac in the best sense of the word, someone willing to do what almost no one else would. They pointed out the obvious. Anthony Joshua isn't ancient. He's 37, still active, still dangerous. Dubois knocked him out, sure, but Joshua was competitive in that fight. Usyk beat him twice, but Usyk beats everyone. Jake gave up size, experience, and skill, yet still made it into the 6th round. From that perspective, survival itself became the achievement. They argued that most retired fighters, even combined, wouldn't last that long if Joshua was truly trying to hurt them. Jake tackled legs because he was exhausted. He ran because he didn't want to get killed. That wasn't cowardice. It was instinct. Some even claimed Jake landed more clean punches before the end than Joshua did, though none carried real power. They compared it to bouts like William Skull versus Canelo Alvarez, where activity masked the absence of threat. In that framing, Jake's performance retroactively justified his ambition. If he could stand in there with Joshua, why not chase other big names? Why not continue making global events people want to see? But social media sentiment told a harsher story. On Reddit and X, fans oscillated between "I told you so" and genuine concern for the sport's safety. Clips of the knockout circulated endlessly, with many pointing out the referee probably should have stepped in sooner. Even with titanium plates now holding his jaw together, Jake Paul stands at a crossroads. Does he return to his own weight class, humbled and recalibrated? Or does he keep chasing these Goliath matchups, pushing the spectacle until something even worse happens? By the 6th round, it was clear to almost everyone watching that the end was coming. You could feel it in the arena. You could see it in Joshua's patience.